How do you overcome setbacks?
I'm a hurdler. Everything we do is a setback. Everything we do is a hurdle. We're used to overcoming hurdles in life. I think by going in and knowing, and seriously, like hurdling is probably a good analogy, is if you know that you're going to come across setbacks most of the time, especially in sport, then, it's just part of life. Like, don't dwell on it. Don't, there are going to be better days ahead. And trust me, I've hit rock bottom, as you know, as I've said early on in this interview, is, once you hit rock bottom, once you had a few setbacks, it's just about a matter of time before, you're going to hit one out of the park. It might take you 16 years, but if you keep going, you're going to hit one out of the park. You're going to hit that home run sooner or later. And I say, once you get that realization that it's just going to happen, especially in sports, especially in hurdles, because you've seen the hurdle races in Europe. You could be the best, Colin, best order. You clip one hurdle and you're done. Don't care how good you are. So that's just a reality. We learned early in our careers as hurdlers that, in life, you're going to clip something, it's going to throw you off, and you might have to start all over again. The person who's going to make it is the person who doesn't quit.
I also saw you mentioned that you have failed more often early in your life, and that helped you to develop the attitude of always getting back up and using setbacks as a learning opportunity. The question I have is, once you are in that moment of setback, it's sometimes hard to see that this could be a learning opportunity.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone who is in that moment and who dwells on that moment, and then advise him or her use it as a learning opportunity?
Well, I mean, that's, again, it depends on, again, how bad you want something and what you're willing to give up to get it, because you're going to have to give up something. You can't have everything in life. And if you realize, again, just like I said just now, if it's going to happen. I think the most important thing, and I think I learned this through Soul and through other setbacks, is the people you hang around. Is you can if you hang around the right people will say, you know what, like, you hang around with me, I've been there, I've done it, I know you're gonna come through this to the other end if you keep going. So you need the people, you want to stay away from the naysayers, you want to stay away from negative people, you want to stay away from people who say, those things can't be done. I mean, winning an Olympic, sometimes I watch the race and I still get nervous when I'm watching. It's 27 years ago. I still get nervous, and I keep thinking one day I'm gonna, I'm watching and I'm gonna hit that last hurdle and wake up out of a dream. Like, it didn't happen, because the chances of winning Olympics are so slim. People used to tell me I couldn't even hurdle, which is probably true. I was the worst hurdler in that field, by the way. If anybody knows anything about hurdles and looks at technique, mine was the worst. But I've heard of my whole life that, coming up, that, especially at the beginning of when I started to run high hurdles coming out of high school, they were saying, like, he's just a sprinter. He'll never make it a hurdler. I ran a good race. He just got lucky. He'll never do that again. And so it's really important to make sure that you surround yourself with, like-minded people who think they can, we can do this. Because you're gonna come across way more people, and trust me, I have, and you just gotta try to get them out of your life. Sometimes it's family. Hang around the people who are, the very few people who've either done it or who want to do it as badly as you do. Because if you hang out with people who go hang out with the malls or go play video games, that's what you're going to end up being. So it's a journey. It's like it took me 13 years to find Colin and Malcolm to train with, and then 3 years to win. So it's really comes down to the basics of how bad you want something and what are you willing to do. I went from Canada to the US, from the US to Britain. I used to train, before I went to Britain, I would train in France, I trained in Finland. Like, I trained with Arto Brigari in Finland for a summer because, he was one of the best hurdlers in the world. I went to train with, get his name right now, from Karsten. Stefan Karastan in France for a while because he was doing really well. So I was willing to do whatever it took and go wherever I needed to go. I was broke. You don't make any money in track and field. I was at one point hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, but they didn't stop me. They didn't say like just because I'm in debt or just because I'm injured or just because of whatever. You can make an excuse from everything. You can have excuses or results. You can't have both. You got to again come back down to your choices you make. So I decided I was going all in until I was going to win or die winning. Die trying. That was it. I mean, that's what I wanted to do. So you know, it's not rocket science. It's how bad you want it.
Nice. Who is your role model and why?
Again, I get early on. There was probably two. Pele. I was brought up in England, and I'm from Guyana, so border Brazil. I supported Brazil. Loved Pele as you know, great athlete, one of the greatest of all times, I think. And then the other one was Ronaldo Niemeyer. Number one, he at the time when I was making my breakthrough, he was the number one hurdler in the world. Beautiful technician. Loved his work ethic. Like I said, when I heard of his workouts. We didn't have Google back then, so it's a lot harder to find out what athletes did. But I heard of his work ethic, and then when he gave me his, you know, didn't even flinch, didn't have to beg him or anything. He's like the best in the world, and I was nobody. And he said, "Yeah, come here, I'll show you what to do." Like I was blown away that somebody that was that great in my eyes would spend the time with not even from his country. So he was a big idol of mine. And funny thing is, when he went to play American football for a couple of years, and that's why he didn't do an Olympics again. And he came back to track and field. I think it was in '87. And oh no, sorry, it was later than that. It was in 89, 90. And I was his roommate. So that was a great thing.
Nice. Well,
yeah.
And with regards to Pele, did you see the 1970 World Cup?
I did.
Nice.
I did.
That must have been amazing, right?
I was still in Britain at the time. And I said, two things we always followed: the Olympics and World Cup. Cool. Johan Cruyff was one of my members too. So there you go, number 10. Yeah.
Well, I'm originally German. I just work in the Netherlands. So,
okay. Yeah. Condolences.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
I meant about being German. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you lived in Austria, I think, right, for some time.
I'm actually Austrian. Yeah, I lived there for 3 years. I got an Austrian passport. My ex-wife is German. That's why I say condolences.
Okay. What's the best advice you received, and who gave it to you?
Career-wise, I would have to say the best advice I received was from Malcolm Arnold, my coach. Completely turned my career around. I said the first thing he told me when I first came out, when I got off the plane, was I said, so it's a great story of how his correcting my foot 1 inch made all the difference in my career. Because I used to run, if I just think like this. So my lead leg would go straight and my trail leg would come over like this. So I'd go like this down the track, because when I land, it pushes me this way. So he's like, I've been training now and running, and finished 4th in the Olympics, 4th in the World Championships, and all this stuff, running like that. And he goes, why don't you just put your foot straight? And then you run straight down the track instead of going like this. So I'm like, okay, I did. And it was he also brilliant coach, the best hurdle coach by far in history, I think. Anyway, but so he said, you do that 39 times in a race. That's 39 inches if you correct it down the track. I won the Olympics by 39 inches. That's how brilliant that man was.
Nice.
So he saw that. I said, running one flight of hurdles. He's going, Mark, do this. Problem solved. Now I just have to work on training. And secondly, Malcolm again was what I already mentioned to you is before the Olympic final. He's like, why are you getting all tense and excited and trying harder? You're ready. You've ran 3 rounds. I won all my 3 rounds. He goes, you have nothing more to do. Just do exactly what you did for the last 3 years, and they do exactly what you did for the 3 rounds. So those 2 pieces of information, and you end up with Olympic gold medal.
Cool. So now I have to ask you for a good advice.
Uh-oh.
You retired in 1988, 1989, something like that, right?
1996.
Oh.
Retired.
Okay.
Well, the first time or the second time?
The first time.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, I retired after Seoul, 88.
Yeah, so in 88. Okay.
Apologies. Yeah. I'm pretty sure I ran 92, but no, okay.
No. You retired the first time in 1989, 88, excuse me. And you made a comeback culminating in your Olympic success, and also you ran your personal best after that, right? So 93, I think.
Yep.
So every person, at least every person who is somehow ambitious about something, has to make a decision to move on from something in his or her life. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have done 2 retirements. And how would you tell someone when it is the right time that you know it's time to move on?
Some people never learn, like me. A lot of my competitors said I should have moved on a lot earlier. When I showed up, they would say, "Grandpa's here again," because I've been around so long.
You won the Olympic title, right? So somehow you were right and they were wrong.
Exactly. I like to prove people wrong. That's my main thing in life. Prove people wrong, because there's too many naysayers out there. It was funny. You know, my actual final retirement after 96, I was actually, I ran in Atlanta. I didn't do very well in Atlanta. That was the first time I didn't make the Olympic final. So I came home, and I was at a wedding, and I was sitting next to these people who I didn't know, but they were athletic fans. And they're like, "Mark, what are you going to do now that you're retired?" And I'm like, "I'm retired?" I'm like, nobody told me, because I was heading back over to Europe to compete. But I guess because of my dismal showing at Atlanta, they figured, you know, and I was 34 years old, it's time to hang them up. So some people never get the message. I think the only reason I retired was because I was injured. And as you get into your 30s, injuries take longer to heal. It's no fun. Like, I don't mind getting injured when you know, it's part of sport. When you recover and you can start training again. But when injuries linger on and it's no more fun, when you can't train properly when you're injured, that was when, you know, retirement comes when it's no more fun. It should always be fun. I always, you know, a bunch of times in my life, I used to think back when you know, you maybe think you want to quit, and you get too serious. Like, it's sport. You know, we're not trying to cure cancer or send anybody to the moon here. It's sport. And the reason we started sport is because it's fun. And when it no longer becomes fun, it's time to move on. And that, for me, that's when it no longer became fun. In 96, when the body is just too many injuries and just taking too long to recover.
Back in the days, how did a typical training day look like?
Again, depending on the time of year. In the fall was volume, so it was a lot of time doing longer runs on the track. So again, depends on the group, and sometimes we'd start in the morning if it was just myself and Colin, because a lot of our group in Britain worked. So other days we train with them after work, like at 5 o'clock or something like that. But in general, say we go to the track for a couple of hours in the morning, and then we'd be in the gym lifting weights for a couple of hours in the afternoon. Some days were 6 hours long, some days were 2 hours long. Again, it just depends on the training cycle and what plan we had for the week, the month, the year. In the fall, there was a lot of longer. That's where we get all of our base work in. We did a lot of hill work. We did a lot of 300s. We did some speed endurance type work, and a lot of volume lifting. So we'd be doing, well, for us, volume sets of 8s or 12 or something with a higher volume, less weight. As we get towards the season, the indoor season, again, we cut back on the volume. So, 300s might come down to 150s or 120s, and weights would come down to sets of 3 rather than sets of 8. Much heavier weights, much more rest, and same with the running. Start to implement more hurdling. Again, in the fall we do longer hurdles, like sets over 10 or 12 hurdles, and in the indoor season it will be down to between 3 and 6 hurdles. And then you build after the indoor season, you'd build back up in the spring, which would be similar to the fall, and then the summer would be similar to the indoor season as far as volume and intensity goes.
And another question. You said the Canadian approach to training isn't right, at least for Canadian track and field. And most successful athletes train in the US or abroad. Yeah. Can you elaborate on what is not right?
What is right would be the question. I mean, it's not rocket science. From day one, I've always fought against my federation and the way we do things here. And I've got a buddy of mine who forced me to go into hurdles, the sprinter. He works with athletes still, and he's still knocking his head against the wall, trying to fight the federations and the way things are done. Like I said, this is not rocket science. My gold medal was the first in 60 years. So I always said, why am I doing what they do when we don't produce any athletes? So actually, the first couple of years of my career on the Olympic team or on the Canadian national team, we have this funding, which is not really funding because it's below the poverty line. But anyway, they held that for me because you have to have a nationally accredited coach in order to get the funding. And I'm like, well, you don't have a nationally accredited coach in my eyes that can coach hurdles. So I don't want any of them. So they said, well, you can't get the funding. Well, I said, keep your funding. I don't care because I want to win. It's more important than your $50 a month or whatever the hell you're paying me. So things haven't changed. That was back in the late 70s. Things are the same. They coach the same way. Coaching to me is not rocket science. For example, my son came to me, who is a specimen, but never really did any sports in high school. He wasn't that interested. And after high school, he said he wants to be a sprinter. So I sent him down to Jamaica. I'm like, want to be a sprinter? Go train with Usain. He's the best. This is not rocket science. All we need to do is go, and they'd happily have you. Go to Jamaica, go to the States, go to wherever, and follow what they do. We don't do that. We try to make things up. We're like, oh, we can, we have coaches up here. I remember back in the day and who would come up to me and say, Jackie Joyner Kersey, if she came here, she's got all these mistakes. I'm like, she's the best in the world. That's our mentality. Is like, no, you can't coach better because she's the best. Whatever she's doing, we should be copying, not the opposite way. So we have this mentality here that I don't know if either we know it or we don't need help, or I always went to the best. Whatever I can get, whatever I can steal, I'll take it from the best. So we're just so far behind in our mentality of training. And as much as I love Canada as a country to live, it's a great place to live, great place to raise a family, stuff like that. When I go to high schools, I tell kids all the time, if you want to be an athlete, get yourself a scholarship to the States, because that's the best intermediate program in the world because of not just their training and the amount of funding they have, but their mentality. Because I always used to think Americans were arrogant. They're not arrogant. They just want to win. They're just confident. There's a fine line between arrogance and confidence. And when they stand on the line, they want to win. When we go to the Olympics, our team wants to make it to the Olympics. Those guys aren't interested in making it to the Olympics. They want to win the Olympics. Big difference.
Yeah. And then I'm always interested to understand a little bit different performance cultures. So what would you think is the difference between Canadian track and field and Canadian ice hockey, for example? Because it's the same nation. Ice hockey somehow has some success.
Yeah, no, we're very successful. I think it's because, number one, it's not really, but it's basically our national sport. And, we have 6 months of snow, as you can see, freezing now. But so it's a culture of, if you don't find something to do in the winter, it's going to be a long winter. And a lot of people like skating, and we were just, not me, but you won't find me on the ice, but we were brought up skating and playing hockey. So it's ingrained in the culture, but the rest of the world's catching up. And I'll tell you why, because we don't train properly. Even our athletes, even our hockey players don't train properly. I work with some NHL guys over here, and I'm not sure how familiar you are with hockey, but we had a very famous Toronto Maple Leaf, his name from Sweden, Matt Sundin. So guys over there might know him a little bit better, but I had a conversation with him last year about some of the athletes training over here, and he goes, Mark, your athletes have no idea what they're doing. Because over here at Dryland, when they're off the ice, they go into a gym and they start lifting weights. Matt said he's never lifted weights in his life. He goes, it's a sport. We're athletic. We want movement. These guys are so stiff. And so it's changing the way people because the other countries, the Czechs, the Finns, the Swedes, they're all faster than we are. They're more athletic than we are. So they're starting to catch up. They haven't been doing it as long as us. They haven't been organized as long as us. But if we don't change our ways, which we are doing slowly, because a lot more of these kids now are not getting off the ice and going to the gym. They don't want, what and Matt said, what they need is track and field training. That's what he used to do, because it hurts. In the gym, I can lift all day long. It doesn't hurt. It's hard, but it doesn't hurt. Try running a couple 300s. It's just pain. When you feel that lactic building up, it hurts, but that's what they need. So we're good in hockey, but we're not as good as compared to the rest of the world as we used to be.
Okay. Do you want to nominate someone to be interviewed?
I'd love to nominate somebody to be interviewed. I'd have to talk to them first.
Okay.
Colin would be a great one to interview.
For sure.
But again, I'd have to ask him and see if he's open to it. But that would be my number one, because he's got such a great mindset and he's such an influence on me. He's younger than me, and I wouldn't say he was an idol or anything when I was growing up, because I didn't know him until he started beating me. But such a smart athlete, such a great mindset and mentality. He'd be a great person. I'll check and see if he wants to do it and let you know.
That would be cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Where can people find you?
Come to Canada. No, just I'm actually building a new website and social network platform to let people know about the new and innovative things I've recently been doing with training. Because, like I said, I think one of the people always ask me, what did I do so differently than all the athletes 60 years before me in Canada? What's the difference? Like, I certainly wasn't more talented. I can tell you that right off the bat. But I think it's when I was competing, when I was a young athlete, I was always learning. Like, it wasn't as easy. It's much easier now, like I said, with the internet. But I think my success came because I was continually learning to do things, whether it's nutrition and supplements or training methods from around the world, from East Germany. My first wife was East German, like learning what the Germans and the Russians did. Like, I was always searching for the best methods to make me the best I could be. And I haven't stopped. Since I retired, I've been doing the same thing. That's why I said I do research in the mornings, all fall and winter long. When it's cold and dark, I'm up and I'm reading and I'm doing research on the internet on anything that's new or anything that I can do to improve myself or my athletes. So I'm building a new site where I'm going to have all that. It's just going to be markmckoy.com. So that's easy for people to find. You can Google, you can find me almost anywhere. But within the next few weeks, I'm going to start to put together some of the information of what I'm doing and the latest research that I've found.
Really cool. markmckoy.com.
markmckoy.com. Pretty simple. It's not up yet, but it'll be up soon.
Mark, thanks a lot for your time.
Christian, it's been a pleasure.